Hi everybody, Jeff Marr with STEM School Highlands Ranch, and joining me is Superintendent Erin Kane of the Douglas County School District. Erin, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeff.
So, a pretty big deal coming up in November. Voters will be deciding on a $66 million mill levy proposal that would increase teacher salaries and a $484 million bond that would go towards school and security improvements, including more school resource officers. So we wanted to talk to you about why staff recommended placing the mill levy override and bond on the ballot this upcoming November. What are the most pressing reasons?
Sure. So we've been experiencing, as you know, a nationwide teacher shortage and labor shortage. Douglas County School District is really struggling to pay competitively due to the difference in our local mill levy override from our neighbors. So we collect $2,000 per student less than Littleton and Cherry Creek, who are right across County Line Road, in mill levy override dollars from our taxpayers. This means that that's equivalent to about $130 million funding gap when you multiply that by our 63,000 students. So that kind of difference in our local funding means that we can't pay competitively with those districts or really any districts around us. And in fact, we're not even close. Our teachers are about $20,000 on average behind Littleton and Cherry Creek in average teacher salary. Our starting salary is about $13,000 less than Cherry Creek's starting salary. And at a time when we don't have enough applicants for the positions that we have, it's really, really difficult to get applicants. We used to have hundreds, and now we have maybe 2, sometimes 0. And the same is true for our entire staff. So if I use bus drivers as another example, we are also the lowest paying in terms of bus drivers. And as a result, we're short 104 bus drivers going into this school year. So we've had to implement rolling blackouts for our families where they have 4 weeks on with a bus and 1 week off. So it's been a real challenge to not be able to pay competitively. That's the reason staff recommended putting a mill levy override for competitive compensation on the ballot.
Now, we also wanted to address that $484 million bond. As I mentioned, it calls for school and security improvements, but what else can people expect with that?
Well, the bond in part will be building new schools in our school deserts because Douglas County is a huge community. We have 820 square miles, which makes us 2/3 the size of Rhode Island. So a lot of our new communities are going to be, say, 1/3 of the size of Highlands Ranch, that's Sterling Ranch, and have no schools whatsoever for their kids to access. They're being bused into overflow schools in another community. The same holds true of Crystal Valley in Castle Rock and the Canyons in Castle Pines. The bond will cover safety and security upgrades for every building in our district, including our charter schools. The bond will cover critical capital maintenance for our neighborhood schools and our charter schools. And the bond will also cover more career and technical education opportunities for students in our district, regardless of what school they attend.
Now, what are some of the myths that you would like to address in regards to school funding?
Sure. Well, everybody assumes that because our property taxes are going up, which they certainly are. My husband and I received our letter stating that our home value has gone up a whopping 60%. And so our taxes will follow and also go up proportionately. We know that there are more taxes being collected locally, and it's natural for homeowners to assume that the school district will benefit from this significant increase in taxes. And that just isn't the case. School districts are funded via the School Finance Act. And the School Finance Act essentially determines an allowance for each school district. And then that allowance is paid for by local taxpayers and backfilled by the state of Colorado. So when we receive more from local taxpayers, we just receive less backfill from the state of Colorado. So there is no net change. And if I may, I often use an analogy. When I have 3 children, and when my 3 children were young, my husband and I gave them $10 a week in allowance. Now, I am perpetually known for not having cash in my wallet. I'm still known for that. So my kids would come to me first, and maybe in the first week, I'm able to give them each $3. So they go see Dad, and Dad gives them the other $7. And then the next week, maybe I have enough to give them each $6. So they go find Dad, and Dad gives them $4. Even though the money out of my wallet doubled week over week, my kids still got their $10 allowance. They are no better off,
Right.
because the state of Colorado, or Dad, gave them less.
Okay.
Until we asked Grandma.
Oh.
And a mill levy override really is over and above the allowance provided by the state of Colorado. So every mill levy override dollar goes directly to our school district, over and above our state allowance, to help us pay teachers and staff more competitively.
Now, last year, a comparable $60 million mill levy was narrowly rejected by Douglas County voters. And as you mentioned, this year, Douglas County homeowners were notified that their property taxes are going up. So what would you say to the average skeptical homeowner in our area who feels like already enough of their tax dollars go toward the classroom?
I would say that we took that into consideration. And we completely understand, because all of us live here in Douglas County as well, and we are all experiencing the same thing. However, our schools have hit crisis. So I was just at an elementary school last week where I spoke to a principal, and she explained to me that she had to combine 3 second grade classes into 2 with 36 students each, because she had no applicants for that 3rd second grade position, not a single applicant. We're short special education teachers, we're short teachers, as I mentioned, we're short bus drivers. It really is hitting the point where it's going to impact the quality of our schools, which ultimately impacts our home values.
In terms of timing, how important are these 2 measures? In other words, what's at stake for the district if they were to be rejected?
If these measures were to be rejected, we'll continue along the path that we're on, which means that we will continue to lose our ability to transport our students. We'll continue to have to combine classes and have bigger class sizes because we cannot fill teacher positions. The combination of the nationwide teacher shortage and labor shortage, combined with being the lowest paying employer on the block, has really hit a point where we just can't get people into our critical positions.
Right. And a big part of that is pay. So is the district looking at other options at the state level to increase staff salaries?
So at the state level, let's say the state of Colorado, they will have extra money next year as a result of everyone's property taxes going up and them having to backfill less. Let's say they distribute that extra money across school districts. That would be amazing, right? Our teachers could make more money. The challenge is the teachers in Cherry Creek and Littleton are going to make more money as well.
Right.
And we will still be $20,000 off. And again, when you have fewer applicants than you do positions, people will select the positions where they will get the most money. If you think about it from the point of view as a teacher, our teachers are just like us, right? They're raising their children, they're saving up for college or putting their kids through college, trying to make a better life for their families. And when they're offered $20,000 more a year to go right across County Line Road, how do they say no to that? Right. Who among us would say no to that?
Right. Now, there's a lot of information being distributed to Douglas County families about the mill levy override and bond. You've been really active in getting the word out. So how are you going to be spending your next few months leading up to November?
So because the Board of Education voted on August 8th to put the bond and mill levy override on the ballot, my role now is simply to educate. So really just sharing the facts about our employment situation and about funding with our community. So I'm not advocating, I'm simply sharing the facts. There is a citizens committee out there that is doing advocating, but the role of staff at this point is sharing facts.
Great information. Superintendent Erin Kane, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that detailed look at what's to come.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
We also wanted to go over what the upcoming bond and mill levy will do at the school level, specifically for STEM. And to talk more about that is our Executive Director, Linan Kowaleski. Linan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So if these 2 measures were to pass in November, specifically what would STEM receive from the mill levy and bond?
Absolutely. One measure would be for higher teacher salaries. So most people are unaware, but our salaries are in line with the Douglas County School District. So just as Superintendent Kane had explained, many of our staff have the opportunities to teach in our neighboring school districts for something like $10,000 to $15,000 more a year. So it definitely would help us retain those high quality teachers and then have consistency for our students from year to year.
And then what's detailed for STEM in the bond?
Absolutely. So all of our building improvements, so all of our needs for repairs, updated facilities, all of that will be covered in the capital improvements bond.
And we already have identified a list of items of needs that the school has. And if it were to be approved, we can look at that list and make selections, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, thanks for providing some details on that, Linnea.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
And be sure to follow Douglas County Schools on their social media for more information about the mill levy override and bond, and follow STEM on our social for updates on this issue as well as we inch closer to November.